I was sitting at work and was like, I don't want to do this forever. So I'm like, how does somebody retire early or whatever? And I
Mm,
came across a Yahoo Finance article that
mm.
talked about Go Curry Cracker. And
Oh,
it
okay.
it said, couple in their 30s retire and travel the world. And I was like, well, that sounds good. So I clicked into that and I think they made reference to Mr. Money Mustache. So I started down that rabbit hole. And then
Mm.
I actually found the Choose FI podcast when they had been, I think they had released 3 or 5 episodes.
Oh, you were close to a day one.
It was super early, yeah. And
Yeah.
so they announced on the podcast that there was going to start being these campfires that were coming around. And
Mm.
there was going to be one in Minnesota where we lived at the time. And
Oh,
so
cool.
all this time I had kind of been sending Paul articles and podcasts, and I was like, check this out, listen to this, let me see
Mm.
if any of it resonates. And then when I heard about the Camp FI, I went home and I told him, I was like, hey, I'm gonna go to this like money camp, like personal finance thing. I'm like,
Mm.
totally get if you don't want to go, but I would love to, extend the invitation. And he was like, yeah, I'll go and see what it's about.
Okay.
And I think by the end of the first night, he looked at me and he's like, "Oh, I'm totally in this."
Everyday people working 9 to 5, saving up that money, trying to survive, investing in the future, trying to be wise, loving money hero. Yeah. Hi, I'm Nick Johnson, host of Everyday Money Heroes, and I've reached early retirement. I'm here to provide information on how to obtain financial independence and inspire you through sharing stories of everyday people who are turning knowledge into freedom. That hustle, always reaching for the sky. We wanna be money heroes, never gonna shy.
Hello and welcome to Everyday Money Heroes. We provide information and inspiration to people of all ages to take control of their financial journey. I'm your host, Nick Johnson, and today we have Paul and Amanda Mollenkopf. Before we get into our conversation with them, first I'd like to ask you that if you have not, that you would subscribe to Everyday Money Heroes on YouTube, or if you listen to this on your podcast, that you would also follow us there on your podcast player of choice. So with that being said, a little bit about Paul and Amanda. They are a dynamic duo providing inspiration, and they are proving that no matter where you start, you have the power to write your own financial destiny. Amanda was a natural born saver who mastered the art of discipline early, tracking toward financial freedom. Meanwhile, Paul was on a bit of a different path, but ultimately realized it was not too late to get his financial affairs in order. Now they are transforming their victory into a legacy, sharing their story, and turning personal lessons into a storybook, fairy tales that make wealth building accessible to the next generation. Please welcome today to the Everyday Money Hero Show, Paul and Amanda Mollenkopf. Hello, Paul and Amanda.
Hello, Nick. How are you doing?
Doing just fine. Thank you both for being here. I have a thing where if I have a backstory where I have met our guests, I like to share it. And so the backstory for us is that we met at Economy earlier this year. So that's we met in Economy 2026, but also by way of another couple, Matt and Yana, who are the Coast Five couple. I had actually came in contact with Once Upon a Fire, and we'll talk about that later on because you were kind enough, Paul, to gift them some of those books, and they were sitting in on a workshop that I was doing, and they actually shared those books to the participants there as we try to spread the good news about financial literacy. So that is how I met Paul. I met his beloved wife, Amanda, at economy as well. So it is great to have y'all here. So what I like to do, first of all, just to kind of get the ball rolling, I like to kind of do a FI check as far as just doing a quick snapshot as far as where you are on your journey. So where you are, have you recently discovered FI? You on the path to FI in the final stretch, or have you crossed the finish line?
We have both crossed the finish line.
Woo! All right.
So
Congratulations.
I've been retired for a year and a half, and Paul has been retired for
Almost 3 years.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. So you all are in your groove now. So you've gotten past that kind of initial feeling of, okay, this kind of feels like an extended vacation. You're literally like you're in your groove now, and that is awesome. So a lot of people wonder exactly, okay, I hear these individuals, they have achieved financial independence, but they don't know what to do. They say, is it real estate? Is it stocks? Is it kind of starting your own business? So exactly what vehicles did you all use during your journey?
Uh, Kind of all of them except real estate.
Okay.
I was a accidental landlord for a while. I bought a
Mhm.
townhouse in 2006 following my divorce,
Mhm.
which was about the worst time you could possibly buy a
Oh,
townhouse.
yeah, things are getting high.
And I watched the bottom fall out of it. I was underwater for a long time.
Mhm.
When my daughter grew up and left the house, I wanted to move closer to work. I wanted to move closer to her, and
Mm.
so I wanted to sell the townhouse, but I was still underwater at the time due to the collapse in 2008 and 9. So I rented it for about 5 years, and
Mhm.
it worked out well. I
Mhm.
made my money back. I was able to, when I did finally sell it, it was back above water, so I made a little money on it. While renting it, I was able to pay the bills at least, but
Mm.
being a landlord did not suit me well at all. I had a number of problems with the tenants, and I don't really care to do that again.
Yeah.
But the other things we did max out the 401ks, the Roth, the
Mhm.
HSAs, open brokerage accounts,
Mhm.
kind of all of the above.
Okay. And so I know one of the things that when I talk to individuals, they talk about all the different vehicles that you can use. And real estate is a really good one. But one of the things I tell people that real estate isn't necessarily passive
Yeah.
income.
Hmm.
I tell people all the time, I've never had Microsoft call me and tell me that a server's gone down. You know, it just doesn't happen that way. So I was like, stocks are only the true passive uh, investments that you can have. No one will call you and ask you what's going on. So that is great. So a mixture of things there, but primarily businesses and things like that. Okay, that's very interesting as far as you had a business. So, and I know that you also said divorce. So so it seems like Paul, you kind of had your own story, and Amanda, you kind of had your own story for a while. So were you pretty much just kind of the 401ks and the vesting or business as well, Amanda? But how did your path look?
I was more the 401k,
Mm,
Roth, traditional IRAs. I just tried to max out as much as I could. I
mm,
had like a, 8 to 5 job that I worked and saved that way. I also had some side hustles like dog sitting and stuff that I
mm,
actually really enjoyed. It wasn't for the money, it was more for the enjoyment of it.
mm. Okay.
And then once Paul and I got together, we did buy a vending machine business and we set up that business for I think 4 years.
Okay.
And that helped to like we just use all of the income from the vending machine business to pay down our house. So
Mm.
that was a huge boost in getting our house paid for.
Okay, let's talk about this because oftentimes individuals have frustration because they say, you know what, I'm not getting enough money from my traditional W-2 job. And one of the things that I know I used on my journey is that I had a 9 to 5, I had a 6 to 10, and then I had some weekend jobs too. And so sometimes I always felt like, okay, if I couldn't necessarily leverage enough income from my primary job, then I would just kind of do side, well, we didn't really call it side hustles back then, but I would do like these additional jobs. So it sounds like you all decided to say, hey, you know what, we're going to also do some additional things. Like for instance, the vending machine sounds very interesting, and you use that as a tool to pay down your mortgage.
Hmm.
Okay. Was that the intent when you went into it? Was it that, hey, we're going to do this vending machine and we want to pay down our mortgage, or just kind of pay off debt, or what was the approach with that?
Yeah, I don't think we really had set aside that money for paying down the house when we first got into it. It was
Hmm.
more just that we were at the height of our wealth accumulation stage.
Hmm.
And we were working essentially 9 to 5 typical jobs. So we did have a little bit of time on our hands or whatever have you.
Hmm.
And that vending business actually worked out really well, considering we ran it through COVID. So
Oh, yeah.
we actually had a machine in a school that I couldn't get into, a Snap Fitness I couldn't get into for a
Oh,
while.
wow. Okay.
So it was a challenge, but at the
Uh-huh.
same time, we had it for about 4 years. When we sold it, we got our initial investment back, and we had some income, during the time that we were running it, and that was able to essentially pay off our house when we did it.
Oh, that's cool. Well, and I'll dig a little bit into that more because vending machine business is something I haven't really met a lot of people doing. How exactly did you all um, fall upon or decide to do the vending machine business? Was it that you all knew someone who had a vending machine route and wanted to sell it, or did you go? How exactly did you find that out?
Well, you kind of used a service. We knew
Yeah.
we wanted to have some sort of business. And
Hmm.
so he kind of went down the path of, I'll let you kind of explain how
Sure.
you did that.
Well, prior to all this, during my first marriage, actually, I owned a couple of UPS store franchises. So
Hmm.
I had been in I kind of have an entrepreneurial spirit to me, and I had gone through that process already of kind of locating a business to buy, kind of it really for us it's a process of elimination. We did go through a franchise finder type service and
Okay.
look through a number of different things, and vending machines kind of won the battle a little bit. And it was more, I think it was more just out of convenience and how it fit our lifestyles as opposed to how good the business would wind up. But it
Mm.
really did work out well because we could go to Sam's Club on a weekend and buy everything we needed to stock the machines. And most of the stocking the machines I did on my way to work or on my way home from work.
Mm,
Uh,
okay.
so it actually was not as inconvenient or as less unpassive as you would think.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things that people may not think about is that okay, a franchise finder service that maybe if they know they want to do something, like okay, well, I don't know how to find it, and just like you all shared, there are services, and also you made reference to being a good fit for your lifestyle, and it's really important that once you do something, that it is a good fit for your lifestyle. For instance, I know one of the things that me and my wife did was that we actually had a car lot. We had a car dealership. And that was not a good fit for our lifestyles at all, or even our personalities, because it was not a really good thing for me. I didn't like repossessing cars from people. I didn't like
Oh,
having to
Mm.
tell people that they need to pay, all kind of stuff. It was just it was not a good fit. So that was definitely sage advice. Whenever you're looking for a side hustle or even a primary occupation, you want to make sure that if there's an opportunity for it to find something that really is a good fit for your personality or your lifestyle, that you can really do it. And especially you're saying that you're able to actually go ahead and fill up those machines on the way to work and back from work. That's really a great fit. And so,
It was.
as we kind of keep looking at your FI journey, I know you said you had some businesses, Paul. As far as it sounds like you had like a was it like a box UPS
Uh,
service or
UPS stores.
UPS stores? Okay.
That's a franchise, and I did end up owning two of them at one point,
Oh,
but
okay.
sold them to facilitate a divorce, basically.
Okay. So is that so you've always been somewhat of an entrepreneur as far as like when it comes to your careers?
For me, a little bit, but
Mm.
mostly most of my career has been managing small businesses, mostly for other people, a few for
Oh,
myself.
yeah, I got you. What about you, Amanda?
I have kind of bounced around industries, but spent most of my career in like the financial services investing industry. So I did some time in private equity, some in private debt and credit.
Okay.
And thankfully, those are good paying careers. So I
Mm.
was able to stockpile my money so that I could exit early.
Oh, okay. So one would think that you being in that field, Amanda, it would just make you just a natural fit for the FI community. Even though I know people who are in areas like that who are not necessarily an early retiree. So, how do you feel as though was that just something that you always had an interest in, or you got into that field and all of a sudden you got interest into personal finance?
I actually have been interested in personal finance sort of my whole life. It's just sort of I don't know, I was born that way, I feel
Okay.
like. Um, and I actually kind of fell into the whole financial services industry. I can't say that I had an interest in it, and I never actually invested in anything that my company did. I like the slow and steady, broad-based index funds, the boring, easy way to do it.
Mhm.
And it just so happened that I fell into that industry and, it paid well. And I tried not to live like my coworkers because none of them have interest in retiring early. They just want to spend everything they make. And I was like, that's not what I want for my life. I want to leave and do my own thing and have fun.
Mm. Well, Amanda, a question. All right, for you, and I can also say this. I'll ask you this question as well, Paul. But Amanda, you said that you didn't have necessarily the interest in doing some of the things that your coworkers did. Are you still in contact with any of your coworkers?
A few.
Okay, and what are their sentiments right now? They know that you've retired early. Kind of is there are they dealing with any type of FOMO or anything like that, or what's going on with them?
I mean, a little bit. I get a lot of, wow, must be nice. And I'm like, well, you could do it
You had the
too.
choice. That's true. You definitely had that. How about you, Paul? Any of your former coworkers or business partners you talk to still?
Yeah, I do. One of them, in fact, was kind of when we talk about my book, she was kind of one of the people I thought of as I was writing it.
Mm,
But yeah, I should say kind of the same thing. It's very foreign to them that you
mm,
would retire early, and not spend everything you make.
yeah.
So I got a lot of that too. But I did get a lot of people asking me educational questions. They wanted to learn a little bit more.
Mm,
And you always will kind of walk that balancing act of not wanting to be pushy about it, but at the same time
mm.
answer their questions and encourage them to join the community.
Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah, I don't want to say I regret that a lot of the individuals that I worked with, when I tried to share it with them, that they were not receptive to what I was trying to share to them. Because now I look at my life and I'm like, you know what? This is pretty good. You know, I put in the necessary work to reap the reward. And I wish that, I could have brought a lot of those individuals, not brought them along with me, but they could have gone on the journey along with me. And so
Mhm.
we could have all, enjoyed it. So one of the things I recently did, which was almost a kind of a full kind of circle moment, I guess, was that I went back to my job earlier this year, and they asked me to do a financial kind of independence talk. And so basically, I went back there and they said, hey, here's a guy, he worked here for 20 years. He's one of us, and he was able to do it, and he's going to go ahead and share some stuff. So I was able to go back and actually share that kind of some of my learnings with them. And the interesting part about it is when I did it, some of my former coworkers attended the session. And they were like, yeah, I know him. We used to sit in the lunchroom together. I know this guy, what he's saying is it checks out. And, when you spend so much time with coworkers, I mean, I worked with those folks for 20 years. I mean, I saw, a lot of their kids grow up, go off to college. So, I mean, we were like legitimately friends. And I really wish that, they would have went on a journey with me. But at the same time, it's not that if they didn't come along with me then, that at some point they decide to take that first step. And so some of them have actually decided to take that first step since I've done it. And so I'm sure they'd be in a better place than they was if they had not. So I'm definitely happy to hear about that. So we talked about where you were. And so now we're going to talk about the f.i.r.e. community, because all of us are members of the f.i.r.e. community. So when exactly did either of you first learn about it? Is it that Amanda, you knew about it, then you told Paul and Paul was receptive to it, or you all found it before each other came? How exactly did it work?
I actually kind of stumbled upon it in about 2017.
Okay.
I was sitting at work and was like, I don't want to do this forever. So I'm like, how does somebody retire early or whatever? And I
Mhm.
came across a Yahoo Finance article that
Mhm.
talked about Go Curry Cracker. And
Oh,
it
okay.
it said, couple in their 30s retire and travel the world. And I was like, well, that sounds good. So I clicked into that, and I think they made reference to Mr. Money Mustache. So I started down that rabbit hole. And then
Mhm.
I actually found the Choose FI podcast when they had been, I think they had released 3 or 5 episodes.
Oh, you were close to a day one.
It was super early, yeah. And
Yeah.
so they announced on the podcast that there was going to start being these campfires that were coming around, and
Mhm.
there was going to be one in Minnesota where we lived at the time. And
Oh,
so
cool.
all this time I had kind of been sending Paul articles and podcasts, and I was like, check this out, listen to this, let me see
Mhm.
if any of it resonates. And then when I heard about the campfire, I went home and I told him, I was like, hey, I'm gonna go to this like money camp, like personal finance thing. I'm like,
Mhm.
totally get if you don't want to go, but I would love to, extend the invitation. And he was like, yeah, I'll go and see what it's about.
Okay.
And I think by the end of the first night, he looked at me and he's like, oh, I'm totally in this. So he wasn't really hard to bring into the community at all.
Okay. So he was not a hard sell at all.
No.
All right. That's great. So I guess my thing is that okay, this is 2017-ish, 18-ish. You went to your first campfire.
Mhm.
And I know that you made reference to a previous divorce. So before up into 2017, 2018, how long had you all been together?
Just a couple of, oh no, well,
No.
we started dating 2008.
Yeah.
Okay,
We
so
got
it had been some
married
time. Okay.
we got married in 2016.
Okay, I got you. All right. So one of the challenges that I hear from many individuals is that they learn about the community and they say, hey, you know what, this is good stuff. I want to change my life. I want to, change my relationship with money. But their spouse is like, oh no, I'm keeping my avocado toast. I am going to Starbucks every morning. None of that stuff is happening. And so what advice would you all have for because fortunately, as you said, Amanda, Paul was very receptive. to
Hmm.
it. But what suggestions or advice would you all have for someone who might be in a situation where they're like, hey, you know what? I want to get better with my money, but my spouse is just not receptive.
Well, what worked for us, drag them to a campfire.
Okay.
I think, I think it's sugar-coated a little bit because I do remember my initial cynicism, what Mr. Money Mustache would call the retirement police. I do
Hmm.
remember her showing me the shockingly simple path from Mr. Money Mustache.
Hmm.
And my initial reaction was, yeah, but how do you know what health insurance is going to cost 20 years from now? I got all the
Hmm.
standard skepticism.
Right.
But at the same time, I was kind of starting over, coming off the divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I was in my mid 40s, so
Hmm.
I better get going, and I felt that pressure to get going. So I was kind of primed to really start up on the saving and investing side. So I think I was a, a good case to join in on it. But she's right. When we went to that campfire, just meeting the people and hearing the stories and seeing people do case studies. I had never heard. I grew up in that generation where you just don't talk about this stuff. You
Right.
don't tell somebody how much money you make or how much money you have. And then I
Hmm.
go to this campfire and see these presentations where people have their spreadsheets up there of their net worths. I just couldn't believe it. But there were a number of things like that were really eye-opening to me, and it got
Mm.
me on board big time.
I got you. That's good. So let me just ask you this question, Amanda. Since in this particular scenario, you were the spouse who wanted to basically get on the journey. Did you ever feel like you were in a situation where you were badgering Paul, or you were like, or were you just trying to kind of balance stuff out, like, okay, well, I'll just maybe like share an article here or a book here. How exactly did you approach doing that?
I tried to do the trickle effect, and I think that is also my advice to other people too. Like, because I was consuming everything I could get my hands on, so I was
Mm.
like drinking from a fire hose.
Hmm.
But I would pick and choose, podcasts or blogs or articles that I thought would resonate with Paul especially,
Hmm.
and just feed those to him slowly. It'd be like, hey, have you ever thought about what you might want to do if you never had to work again, or how you might want to spend your days, or whatever? And I don't know. I don't know if that was effective. It worked, but I don't know if that's the reason.
I think prior to us attending that campfire, as she was doing that, feeding me these little, uh, listen to this podcast or read this blog,
Hmm.
it's not that I wasn't on board. I knew it was time for me to save and time for me to get serious. So I was, but
Hmm.
I didn't really jump all in into financial independence probably until that campfire. And then the thing that really did it for me was reading The Simple Path to Wealth. That one really resonated with me. And
Hmm.
following that campfire and then starting on The Simple Path to Wealth and reading other books and listening to all the podcasts, I was all in.
Yeah, it's great when you are in a situation where you go ahead and you trust the process and then you see the process works. And that's how it is, like, with the simple path to wealth, for instance. I remember when I first started investing, I was like, I don't know how this $300-400 that I'm putting in here every month is going to actually do anything. But as time went on and compounding started to do what it does, and I started to see things happen, I'm like, man, I was like, I'm actually making a jump. And it's and I tell people all the time is that don't don't give up too early, because what happens is that people don't allow compounding to do what it needs to do. And I was sharing a compounding interest chart with someone recently, and I showed them that maybe like around 14 years in, that your money would have only like doubled once. And so because kind of based on rule 72. But I was like, well, just kind of look at it, wait for the hockey stick to come. It's going to come. When you start to hit like
Exactly.
around, you're 20, you're going to be like, oh man, your eyes going to start swelling. And it's amazing now when, the stock market can have a bad day. And I remember when I was younger, I would go and I would look at it, and in the day, it would be like, oh man, I lost, $500. Now it's a whole lot different, than $500, but it's a good problem to have, because it's the compounding. If you go and you look at the actual principle that you actually put into the market, and comparison to what it's actually worth, is so amazing. So that's good. And one other thing I do want to mention, Paul, is that a lot of times we can come up with good reasons why we can't do something, but it sounds like from what you shared with us that you're in your mid 40s, and also that you were just coming from a divorce, correct?
Correct.
And even all those things going on, you were still able to navigate the path and reach financial independence. So that is definitely something that we should just commend you on. From that particular situation where you went through your divorce to financial independence, how many years would you say that was?
Well, following the divorce, I had to sell my business when I got
Mm,
divorced, and I really didn't have much of an exit strategy. So I kind of bounced around to some jobs that didn't pay all that great. They paid the bills barely, and that was about it. I
mm,
had joint custody of my only daughter at the time. So saving money at that stage was virtually impossible, especially with the townhouse issue that we talked about as well.
mm,
Um, but following my daughter growing up and going off on her own, that would have been about 2014, probably something like that. So that was about the time that I was able to start saving a little bit. And then when Amanda and I moved in together, we were two incomes, no kids in the house,
mhm.
and I got a better paying job at that point. So that was the point where I was really able to kick it in. So probably about 10 years total.
All right, that is great. So you're able to do that in around 10 years, which is great. So one thing that also I like to ask both of you is that Amanda, had you been, I don't think you had been married before,
Correct.
Paul? Okay. And so when you came in, Paul, I'm assuming that you may have had some previous kind of debts and things like that that you brought into the relationship. So what approach did you all take in regards to kind of those existing debts? What caused, I know sometimes we have individuals that say, hey, you know what? I kind of created stuff before you came. So I'm going to kind of go ahead and deal with it and, let me go ahead and work through it. Or some people, they'll take the approach and, hey, you know what? We just kind of treat it as kind of community debt at this particular point. What approach did you all decide to take with that?
We actually decided, since, it was his second marriage, he
Mm,
obviously has a daughter, and I had already been well on my savings journey, that
mhm.
we decided when we got married to do the accounts as his, hers, and ours.
Okay.
So what we did with the joint account was just each put in an equal amount every month to pay all of our joint bills. But
Hmm.
then everything else we keep it separate. So like there's never been any money fights, because if he wants to go spend, $500 on a pool table, he can go do that, and it
Mm,
doesn't matter to me because it's not my money, it's his.
I got you. Okay.
And I know some people are against that when you're married, like, oh, you should join everything, but this has absolutely worked for us, and I would do it 10 times over
Mhm.
again.
Yeah, no, I think that it really depends on. I can share the way that me and my wife did it, which was very different because me and my wife we got together. We both had she had a little bit, I had nothing. And so when we got together, we really had no debt, no nothing. So kind of everything we came together with, and we just did it, and we just put it in one pot. But we didn't really have any existing bills or anything like that. So it really wasn't a whole lot that we had to kind of deal with going into it. And so we kind of took that one thing. And since I was the money nerd, I kind of did the finances. And one thing my wife always told me, she was like, hey, she was like, I'll let you run up the money, but my card better never get declined. And so if there's something going on, she was like, you better let me know ahead of time. And I was like, fine. So I always did that. But one of the things we always say is that's personal finance, right? So it's very personal. So what may work for, Paul and Amanda might not work for Nick and Adina. So it's just very important. But the thing is to find something that works. you know,
Absolutely.
that's extremely important. So, all right. So we have talked about the FI community and how are so we kind of talked a little bit about coworkers, but what about your family? What is your family's take on what you all are doing right now as far as like, your retirees, you're enjoying your lives, you travel and do things like that. So what's the take with the kind of family around that?
I would say my family is supportive, still, I think, in a little bit of disbelief. I retired before both of my parents did. Um,
Oh, okay.
so it's sort of one of those, oh, must be nice. But then they also saw the work that I put in the years prior of saving and, investing and stuff and working towards it. I have a
Mm,
brother who is absolutely not into personal finance at all,
mm.
and kind of lives more the paycheck to paycheck life. And he doesn't really say much about it, so I don't really know what he feels other than he just doesn't want to be me. Like he just likes to have his toys, and he doesn't care if that means he works till, whatever age.
Oh wow. Okay. And it's all about choices, right? I mean,
Hmm.
we do have that choice. What about you, Paul? Any kind of things from family or friends on your
The only ones that
journey?
come to mind, Nick, are my mother's very happy that this has happened to me because my father passed away in 2017 and
Mm.
she needed someone to manage her money. And
Oh,
she,
okay.
she feels very comfortable knowing that I've gone through this process on my own and now I
Mm.
can manage her money as well, which it's kind of great for me too because I'm learning about RMDs and I'm managing a retiree's money prior to me retiring. So that it's a good experience for me. And for my daughter, I've written a number of letters to my daughter. I kind of
Mm.
took the page out of J.L. Collins and Jackie Cummings Koski, writing letters to your daughter,
Mm.
and I did that. I wrote a letter a week for over 2 years, so just
Oh, wow.
just
Okay.
over 100 letters. And so she knows what a money nerd I am, and she's I think
Mm.
some of it has rubbed off.
Uh,
She I haven't taken her to Camp FI. Maybe that's what I need to do.
just bring her in. Just bring her in. Yeah. Is she I guess I have a few questions about that. Okay, so first of all, when it comes to your daughter, you wrote the letters to your daughter, and I guess at some point, we got to start writing these boys. All here, all here, because I think it's J.L. Collins, it was Jackie, and now it's you. I was like,
Yep.
I got a son. I had to write a note, some letters to my boys. But I guess is she receptive to? I guess this question is she currently like doing anything like investing or anything like that? Is she?
She is,
Mhm.
but she's not open with her money numbers with me. So I
Okay.
don't know. My honest answer is I don't know what all she's doing. She has a daughter,
Okay.
and a husband, my son-in-law, and they have
Mhm.
kind of a unique situation where I was talking about my mother. My mother's 86 and battling dementia, and
Mm.
she's still living in the home that she and my dad had for about 35 years. It's a
Okay.
split level. She lives upstairs. My daughter, granddaughter, and son-in-law live downstairs,
Okay.
and so they're essentially house hacking. They're living rent free.
Mm.
Uh, it's free money wise, not work wise. They're taking very good care of my mother. So it's working out really well for I think everybody involved.
Mm.
And I know like I said, they're not transparent with their numbers with me. At the same time, they're both driving pretty used cars. They're certainly
Mm.
not living extravagant lifestyle by any
Uh-huh.
means. And I know they're both making reasonable money. So
Okay.
it's got to be going someplace. I'm hoping it's going into investments.
Yeah, no, that's good. One of the things that when I'm talking to people who have young children who are young adults, and I ask them how they're doing, they're like, well, I'm not sure. I was like, first of all, like, are they asking you for money? Because if they're not asking for money,
That's
they're
the
doing at
number
least
one
okay.
goal right there. Eliminate
If
that.
they're not asking for money, they gotta be doing at least all right. They're not asking for money. So yeah, I have my oldest boy is, oh goodness, my oldest boy will be 30 this year. And I remember trying to, kind of talk with him. I remember as a teenager, I bought him two stocks. I think it was like now before then he had an assignment in his school that I had to buy two stocks. I'm trying to remember. One of the stocks was Sony. I don't remember what the other one was because I asked him, I was like, so I was like, let's look at two companies that you like and enjoy, whatever. And back then he was really into PlayStation. And Sony made the PlayStation. So I remember about Sony. I don't remember the other stock, but we bought it. I think maybe it was like 15. I bought one share of one and one share of the other one. And we forgot about it. And so literally what happened is that I think he was like 15 years old. I got a phone call from the brokerage. Maybe he's like 21, 22 years old. Because they had like set up an UGMA for him. And so they're like, hey, it's time for us to transfer ownership from you to him because he's an adult now. And so they told me how much was in the account. I was like, oh, I was like, man, okay. So I think maybe I spent like maybe $50 in. I think it was like maybe 500-600 bucks, but we hadn't done anything to it at that particular point. And so I went to my son. I was like, hey, son, I was like, this is the brokerage on the phone, and they are saying, hey, we need to transfer it over. And I was like, do you remember that account? He's like, oh yeah, I remember. I was like, guess how much it is? He's like, oh man. I was like, yeah. I was like, see how cool it is. And so I was like, okay. I was like, son, I was like, we didn't even know about it, so just use this and keep building on it, right? And so he took the account over. Now, granted, I won't say what he did with it. I'll say what he did with it. He said he had some debt, so he sold it. So he sold it. But the good thing about it is, like, fast forward a couple years later, and I do these workshops here in Jacksonville, and where I try to introduce individuals to the FI community and the kind of simple math and things like that. And he came to one of them, and he sat there, and at the end of it, he's like, "Can you tell me that, like, I might not have to work anymore? Like, if I just do this stuff like next 10, 12 years or something?" I was like, it's a good chance. He was like, I'm done. And so from that particular point, he just went all the way in. I mean, he's like been extreme. I was like, son, I was like, he's going in. So, people talking about like the rice and beans. Yeah, my son kind of went to like directly like rice and beans. No meat, no nothing. So he's doing that. And so I say all that to say is that we do these things and we try to expose our young adults to the benefits of investing. And we don't know how much really gets through. But
Yeah.
ultimately, they'll see it and one day, it'll resonate with them and they'll do that. So that is that's something that we should all be proud of that we're doing as far as being able to model something that they're doing. So we've kind of talked about your FI journey, we've talked about others, but also we talked a little bit about your book. And I know it is Once Upon a Fire. You are a published author. If you could tell us a little bit about the book, I know that you kind of shared a little bit of the origin of it, but about the book and what's your desire as far as what can come from the book for individuals.
Well, the way the book was created came from, I never expected to be a published author.
Mm-hmm.
Writing these letters to my daughter, I'd highly encourage you doing it, by the way, Nick. It's a
Okay.
really interesting exercise because in writing over 100 letters, I didn't write on 100 different topics. I
Mm-hmm.
wrote on a few topics and tried to find different ways to, describe them that find something that would resonate with her.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was I reminded her of a play that I took her to when she was probably 10 years old, and it was a satirical version of A Christmas Carol. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and my letter was, do you remember that? I know you enjoyed it. Think of your spending your money that way. How much money did you spend this month on that spending of spirits past? You bought
Mm-hmm.
that car 3 years ago and you're making that monthly payment. You put this, this trip to the gas station in a credit card 6 months ago and you're still paying for.
Mm-hmm.
And then the spirit of spending present. You stopped at that gas station and plunked down a couple bucks and bought an energy drink or what have you. And then the spirit of spending future, your
Mm-hmm.
401k, your Roth, and of course I encouraged her to uh, tilt as much to the future as she possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
And so that led me to thinking, maybe I should just rewrite A Christmas Carol, just kind of do a reimagined version of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that led me down the path of thinking of other fairy tales and children's stories that could
Mm-hmm.
have a financial independence lean to it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I came up with 8 different stories. Um, and I created a book out of it.
Mm-hmm. And it is definitely is a good read. One of the things I would like to say in it is that I feel as though it's very relatable because a lot of these stories we've already heard before as being kids, so it's like we're able to kind of like really tie them together. So it's really good for individuals who would like to get a copy of the book. Can they like just go to Amazon? Is it on Amazon, or where's like where individuals get it from, Paul?
It is on, I do have a website for it, just onceuponaf.com,
Mm.
or you can just go to Amazon and search Once Upon a Fi.
Okay,
And
I got
it
you.
looks something like that.
All right, nice. All right, and I'll make sure to cut a picture and also
Oh,
share
thank
the link down in the description as well for the book.
thank you.
So, before we get out of here, just kind of in closing, where do you all see? Do you? I guess we can go a couple of different questions. So I'll give you two. And the first question I'll do is that what advice would you give to someone who feels as though they're in a situation, or let's scratch that last piece. What we do for someone who doesn't believe that it's possible to not only retire at just like the traditional retirement age, but to also retire early. What words would you have for those individuals?
I guess from my point of view, I would say it's absolutely possible. It
Mhm.
might not go as fast as you'd like, but it's
Mhm.
still possible. I mean, Paul's kind of the poster child for it. He came through a divorce and having saved nothing, and he catapulted himself just knowing he wanted to be done and have his time be his.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely.
I think my advice would be get involved in the financial independence community one way or another, because you will see all sorts of examples of it working. And
Mm.
you'll believe that it works, whether it be, just starting out on Choose FI or Everyday Heroes,
Mhm.
just get involved, learn from people that have actually gone down the path or are on the path,
Mhm.
and you'll soon realize that you can do it too.
Biggest challenges that I had as a young person, and this really goes back to what you both were saying as far as involvement in the community. I had to trust the process because I didn't see anybody modeling it. And so everybody I knew had to work. So I was like, okay, I had this desire where I didn't want to have to work by the time I was 50, but I did, everybody I knew had to work. And so I was like, what makes me think I'm different? And I just had just a little bit of faith that, somehow I could figure something out. And
Mhm.
I stayed consistent until I actually started to meet people who was on that journey. And then I started to actually see people who had retired in their mid 30s, late 30s, early 40s. I was like, whoa. I was like, it's a possibility I could do it. And so definitely the community is important. Like I said, if you have a doubting spouse, get them over there to a campfire, it'll definitely
Mhm.
change some things for them. So I'm going to get ready to close out here. I want to thank you both, Paul and Amanda, for giving your time and speaking to the audience. I want to encourage those of you who might be watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, go out, please support these members of the community as far as going. And it's a good tool as far as the book Once Upon a Fire. It's not just for kids, it's for anybody really who wants to really learn kind of some of the fundamental things around personal finance. And as I sign off here, I'm going to remind you, if you have not subscribed to Everyday Money Heroes, you would please do so on YouTube or on your podcast player of choice. And as always, I'm your host, Nick Johnson, and I'm reminding you to trust the process. Have a great day.